The AWARE project's aim is to balance the public conversation about psychedelics, spread accurate information, and give a new face to psychedelia. We feel that this change will occur through connection and relationship, one individual at a time. We are calling on everyone whose lives have been improved through the mindful use of psychedelics to educate themselves and become ambassadors for the psychedelic experience. Show those around you the people who use psychedelics mindfully across all social, racial, economic, and political boundaries.
All right, so I'd like to introduce Michael Stone, who is a Los Angeles-based Stan-Grof-Certified Holotropic Breath Facilitator, and I'll let him take the floor and explain a little bit more about what he's all about. So with that, thank you, Michael. Okay, great.
So, thanks for inviting me to speak tonight, Ashley. And the first thing you guys might be wondering is, why are you hearing about breathwork when this is a psychedelic salon? So, the reason is because the developer of Holotropic Breathwork, who is a psychiatrist named Stan-Grof, actually developed the modality through work with LSD psychotherapy. That was how it actually started. And he, back in the day, was one of the psychiatrists that was working with the various pharmaceutical companies and working with various substances that they came up with and where they wanted to know, did it have any value in psychotherapy or not? And one of the substances that they came up with was LSD. But at the time, they had no idea what value, if any, it would have in psychotherapy. So basically, he was one of the psychiatrists that worked with LSD in the beginning stages when it was still legal to do so. And he spent quite a bit of time working with it and noticed that there were patients that he worked with that he'd had for years that he had made very little or no headway with normal psychotherapy, where with the LSD, where they were in a controlled setting, in a therapeutic setting, where they were basically laying down, relaxed, blindfolded, to soft music, and taking LSD, that because of the effect of the LSD and putting them into what he calls a non-ordinary state of consciousness, where they're kind of defense mechanisms and their mind is kind of off to the side, and the stuff that needs to come up and be released is more free and able to come up, is able to be released, that he was getting these amazing results in just 1 or 2 sessions that he hadn't gotten in years of regular psychotherapy. So he was working with this and started to make lists of the different types of experiences that people had. And at a certain point, obviously, they made it illegal to do so. But he was at that point, he was really committed to finding alternate paths for people to have these healing experiences from non-ordinary states of consciousness without the LSD. So basically that put him on a journey and of doing research in what historically various societies had done to allow people to get into these states. Like, for instance, in shamanism, which is one of the more ancient healing modalities, they use basically sound. And they use like kind of trancy sound with rattles and drumming for these people, the shaman, the medicine men of those times, to put themselves into kind of this trance where they can connect with kind of the spirit energy and bring down healing energy for people. He looked at like the Buddhist history where they use breath and watching the breath. And so he basically did a whole study of what had been done historically. And he also, on the other side, also looked at what modern consciousness theory had brought and worked with that also. So he spent a lot of time researching this. And then after that, he was working at Salon and was working with these month-long workshops, in essence, where he worked with these groups of, I would say, explorers, basically, and worked with different combinations of these things that he had found to see what was most effective in allowing people to access the healing power of these non-ordinary states of consciousness. And that was, in essence, how he developed what he then called holotropic breathwork. And where the name comes from is holotropic is Greek for moving towards wholeness. So it's in essence allowing this kind of inner drive towards integration or wholeness to basically come forth by, through a various combination of music, and also breathing and a couple other things that he put together in order to create the healing effect that he had seen so dramatically with the LSD back when he was able to use the LSD. So after he worked with these groups for a period of time, he then basically put together this holotropic breathwork, which is in essence a one-day workshop where you go through the day and experience various things, and where at the end of the day, hopefully if all goes well, you've been in this non-ordinary state of consciousness and basically had an experience of healing. And what he found was that there's 4 types of experiences that people have. And this is true with the LSD psychotherapy and also with the breathwork. And the first is what they call a sensory experience, where there's actually energy that is, like, in essence, stuck in your body from something in the past. And a lot of times people have trauma in their lives, and along with the emotional experience that wasn't fully released, there's also something in your body that's also connected to that. And so basically, sometimes you'll feel hot, you'll feel cold during the experience, you'll feel, sometimes people feel what they call tetany, where energy in their hands gets really intense and very stiff, and then it gets released. So there's a lot of stuff going on in your body, energy that's been stuck there many times for years or decades and wants to release. So that's one of the 4 types of experiences. The second type of experience is what they call biographical, where people actually have visual experiences, just like on an LSD journey, basically, where they're actually back in their past, in essence, in their childhood, where something's happening to them, where at the time, because it was kind of too overwhelming or too scary to fully experience, it was partially experienced, and so it was blocked in their system, in essence. And so, but this time, you're in a space where you can actually fully experience and feel it, and then release it, and then it's gone out of your system. So this could be stuff from when you were 5 years old, or 10 years old, or even just 6 months ago, or whatever. The third type of experience is something that they call transpersonal experience. And that's just a sidelight. That's kind of how I got into breathwork. About 8 years ago, I went down to Peru and did a ayahuasca journey. At the time, I didn't even know what ayahuasca was. I was actually down there for a totally different purpose, and I ended up doing an ayahuasca journey. So I was going out just to kind of be in the rainforest, and then on the way out there, like the lady who was organizing it said, "Hey, for another $100, a shaman can go out with you, and you can have an ayahuasca experience." I go, "What's ayahuasca?" He said, "Oh, it's a healing thing they do in the jungle down here. They've done it for hundreds of years." I said, "Well, they've done it for hundreds of years, it's probably all right." So anyway, so I went out and had this just amazing journey that where I felt like connected to the universe and just dissolved into everything. I was in the body of animals and just like this unbelievable experience. And then I'm from the sciences, basically. I originally got my degree in engineering and then in business. So my mind works, okay, if I can have this experience with a substance, the receptors are there in my brain, there must be a way to do it without the substance. So I came back and kind of started searching for modalities where I could kind of have these types of experiences without the substances that I couldn't get hold of in the United States. So, and that's kind of what ultimately got me, into the breathwork realm, because someone told me about it and I checked it out and I had a similar type of experience and I said, wow, this is amazing. So I was totally hooked from my first experience. So anyway, so that's the third type of experience, which is kind of like a transpersonal experience where you can feel like just dissolved into the universe. Or sometimes people actually have an experience of seeing something that's going on in a different part of the world, or like with a family member, or where they're in this one experience, this one woman who hadn't spoken to her mother in like 20 years had this experience of being in her mother's body when she was a child and seeing things that had happened when she was a child, and how she had had all this like abusive stuff happen to her. And when after the experience, she actually called her mother and checked it out, and it was all totally correct. And her mother never told her about that. And she had and she recreated her relationship with her mother because she had more compassion for her after that, knowing what she had gone through as a child. So all those types of experiences, some people think they have, or at least feel like they have past life experiences, where they feel like they're having an experience of when they were in the 1700s or 1800s. One example is of this guy who had always been afraid of water, and he had no idea why. He hadn't ever had that experience with water, but he wouldn't go in a swimming pool, he wouldn't go in the ocean. And he had this experience of being in a past life, being drowned, basically. And once he had that experience, he wasn't afraid of water anymore. So whether it was a past life experience or not, who's to say? Anyway, it was a very healing experience for him. Right. So that's the third type of experience. Then the fourth type of experience is an interesting one, which is called a perinatal experience. And one of the things that Stan-Grof found when he was kind of categorizing and cataloging these experiences people would have with the LSD psychotherapy and then later with breathwork is that people would have experience of going back through various pieces of their birth process. And if you look at historically, like with Freud and with psychiatry, the basic concept is that, at least with Freud, was that when you were born, you were like a blank slate. You started from zero. So anything that happened before you were born had no relevance whatsoever to any issues that you had later. And when you think about it, that's kind of ridiculous. Yeah. With all this stuff that's going on, and, while you're in the womb, this and that. But at the time, that's what they thought. And the reason they thought that was because, based on the medical theories at that time, the infant's brain wasn't myelinized enough in order to actually create memories and thoughts when they were in the womb. Now, what they found since then, through more modern research technologies, that you actually do have memories, but they're not explicit memories like thought memories, they're implicit memories or body memories that you have from the time of your conception. So basically all those things are relevant, and people actually there's a lot of energies that are stuck in your body and in your psyche from the birth process. And what Dr. Grof noticed was that it was basically broken up into 4 pieces of the birth process in terms of the types of experiences. The first one, he called them birth perinatal matrices or matrices. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So, and all of this, it wasn't like he was making this up or whatever. It was these are things that he was noticing from experiences that people were having through LSD psychotherapy and breathwork. So the first matrix is basically from the time you're conceived to the time just before the birth process actually starts, so the first 9 months in the womb. Anyway, so the birth process, 4 parts. Part 1, from the day you're conceived to just before the actual birthing process starts, at the 9-month stage. And there's 2 possible things that can happen in this. One is in a normal situation where the mother's in a basically healthy situation where she's eating decent food and where she's not under tremendous stress, she's not taking drugs. And in that kind of a situation, it's a very kind of oceanic, connective type of experience. Like all your needs are being taken care of. You're just kind of floating in water. You don't have to do anything. So it's a very positive kind of oceanic connective experience. Then, obviously, if your mom's taking drugs or this or that, then it could be a hellish experience too. And people, in those situations, it affects people's lives. And that's energy that, if they don't release it, will affect them for the rest of their life. The second part of it is basically what they call the second matrix, which is the part where, right before birth, when the birth contractions have started, but like the birth canal hasn't opened yet. So then the fetus feels these tremendous pressures, these contractions, and its food's getting cut off because the umbilical cord's getting squeezed, but there's no place to go, basically, so they're just stuck. And when people in their lives go into these places where they feel depressed, where they feel stuck, where they feel like there's no way out, like no matter what I do, it's never going to change, it's this energy from what they call the second matrix that's kind of reappearing due to something that's happening in their lives. So then the third matrix is when like these contractions are still happening, but the birth canal is open, so now at least there's like a way to get through. So now the fetus is like kind of struggling to get out, and that energy is associated with aggression, with sexuality, with overcoming, with pushing through something. And one thing they've noticed is that infants that are born through cesarean, in general, have a harder time dealing with conflict in their lives because they haven't had to go through this third matrix experience of pushing through something into the world. So there's a lot of interesting things. This is a really short summary of all this stuff, but Stan-Grof's written books about it. So, and if you want to know which books to read or whatever, he's a very prolific writer. He's got about 10 books out. One's on LSD psychotherapy, one's on holotropic breathwork, one's the future of psychology. He has stuff about the birth process. So there's all different kinds of books you can read if you want more detailed information. And then the fourth matrix is basically when you kind of pop out into the world, and it's kind of a death rebirth experience. Death of kind of being like a water being and being a fetus, and rebirth into a new way of being, which is, like being in the world and being like an air creature instead of a water creature. So that's like a kind of breakthrough sequence, basically, where you're like a death, rebirth into a new way of being. So all of these different matrices have different kind of energies that's kind of held in our system. So during the breathwork sequence, during a certain percentage of the experiences, people actually re-experience parts or all of this birth sequence to release energy that's stuck in their system from those various pieces of the birth process. So that's the fourth kind of experience that people have. So, and during a breathwork sequence, you can have in the real holotropic breathwork workshop, the breathwork sequences are 3-hour experiences. So you're breathing for 3 hours. And so you can have various types of experiences, and sometimes you go from one to the next. So you can have a series of experiences, you can have one longer experience, you can go in and out of experiences. So you're just kind of on this journey, basically, for 3 hours. And the main difference between something like an LSD experience and breathwork is that if you take a substance like LSD, it's like you're in for the count. You're in for 8 or 9 hours. And once you're in after an hour, if I'm tired of this, you can't get out. So you're in for the duration. With breathwork, you really have a certain amount of control over the experience, because the more deeply you breathe, the more intensely you go into the experience. If you ever want to say, okay, this is too much, I can't handle this, you would just slow down the breathing and you drop out of the experience. So you're the one who's basically calling the shots in holotropic breathwork. So, in terms of safety, it's obviously a much safer mechanism for working with these experiences. However, in general, during the breathwork, we encourage people to work through the experiences rather than to drop back. And the basic theory is that people during the breathwork generally have two kinds of concerns. One is that too much is going to happen, and one is that nothing's going to happen. And the too much is going to happen is that, in essence, the answer to that is that the whole theory behind this breathwork and what Stan found in this LSD psychotherapy is that people have this kind of inner intelligence, or inner healer, or whatever you want to call it, that really knows what's ready to be brought up and is ready to be processed. And if it's not ready to be processed, it's not going to be brought up during the breathwork sequence. So if it's coming up, it's ready to come up and go out. It's ready to leave your system and say bye-bye. And so really it's like, if you can stay with it and stay with the experience, and sometimes experiences can be blissful, sometimes it can be difficult if it's different, for instance, if it's childhood abuse that's coming up or something, obviously that's a difficult thing to fully experience. But once it's fully experienced, it's really released from your system. People feel awesome afterwards. So it's really a question of trying to work with people, and people, I'm what they call a facilitator. So it's not like we're leaders or gurus or anything. We're basically just there to facilitate people's experience. So it's your own inner healer that's basically bringing the stuff up and creating the experience for you. It's not us. So we're just there to make sure that nothing gets in the way of your experiences. So that's the answer to what if too much is going to happen. And the other thing is nothing's going to happen. I'm going to be breathing. I'm just going to be laying there on the mat. I'm not going to go on my journey. And really the answer to that is that it's generally what triggers you into an experience, something emotional will come up. Because whenever there's an emotion that comes up, there's something that's attached to that emotion that wants to send you to a certain place. And if you're breathing over let's say 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, and you feel like nothing's happening, I guarantee you there will be an emotion that comes up over that. Either you're going to be pissed off, you're going to be frustrated, you're going to be, why is this happening to me when everybody else is having an experience and I'm not? So basically, what the instruction or suggestion is with that is work with whatever emotion's coming up. And that'll basically projection into the process. So, and that also leads to one of the most important principles of breathwork, is that there's two ways to deal with experiences in life. And it's basically working in what they call the vertical or the horizontal. And in general in life, we work in generally 90% of the time, I'd say in the horizontal, where if there's an emotion that comes up inside of me, for instance, like the normal reaction would be to say, you made me angry. Or, you know, you screwed me up, or you did this, or you made me happy. You know, it's like, and it's like basically projecting what's happening inside of you onto something that's happened in the outside world. And the reality is that if someone does something, it'll have an effect on you, it'll have a totally different effect on somebody else. So it's really not what they're doing, it's like just triggering something inside of you that's basically being brought up. And whether it's happiness, whether it's joy, whether it's sadness or whatever, just like, let's say a song comes on and you feel happy. It could be, maybe that was a song that was playing at your high school graduation, who knows, but it's bringing up something in you. So it's really all coming up from inside of you. So the basic way to get the most out of these breathwork sequences is to basically stay vertical and work with, rather than projecting it onto something that's happening outside, like basically working with what's coming up inside of you, just making that bigger and working with that, in essence. So in other words, let's say a track comes on, and you say, oh, this music sucks. You know, it's like the last one was so good, this is pulling me out of my experience, rather than projecting it onto the track, basically working with the emotion that's on the inside, which is frustration or anger or whatever, and just allowing that to come up, and that's going to basically get you deeper into the experience. So it's basically working with what's coming inside of you versus projecting onto the outside world. That's one of the basic principles. The second basic principle is letting go of expectations. And the basic concept is that your mind is what got you into this trouble in the first place. By blocking stuff inside that should have been completely released. And if everything's completely released as it's experienced, then nothing's going to ever get you upset or get you this or get you that. And so a lot of this stuff is just blocked in your system, whether it's from prior relationships, whether it's from childhood or whatever. So basically, your mind is what caused the problem, so you don't want your mind to try to guide the experience. So the whole thing with the breath is your mind kind of goes off to the side. And really, it's not an experience of where you're just kind of off and you're like lost and you have no memory of what's happening. It's more an experience in general of basically your mind being off to the side and just kind of watching and observing like a witness. And like things are going on inside of it, basically. So you basically don't want to guide the experience or go in with an intention. You want to let your inner intelligence or inner healer, or however you call it or want to see it, guide the experience for you. And just go wherever it's going to go. And a third principle is basically the only way out is through. So you want to go, like if an experience is coming up, the way to get out of it is to basically fully experience it and go through it versus avoiding it and pulling back. So it's really, it's a very feminine modality. It's an allowing modality versus a guiding masculine modality, where you're basically surrendering to the process, surrendering to your inner intelligence, and just allowing whatever wants to happen to happen. And what I like about it is, rather than some of these other things, like whether it's Reiki or some of this other stuff, it's always someone's doing something to you. You know, they're channeling energy for you or this or that. This is basically, it's your own inner intelligence that's really bringing up what needs to be brought up to be processed. So you're doing your own healing in essence. This is really a self-healing mechanism, where you're just getting your mind off to the side, so this natural healing ability that you have is, through this non-ordinary state of consciousness, it's allowed to presence itself and process through. So it's, to me, that's just a very beautiful concept, because it's like, it's a very empowering concept, because you're the one who's basically doing healing yourself. And it's just about trusting yourself. So it's trust and surrender is one of the basic principles. Trusting and surrendering to yourself. You know, not to an outside person, not to an outside authority, but just to yourself. So basically, the way that the workshops work is that they're an all-day experience, and they consist of several pieces. So there's this 3-hour breathing sequence where basically you're laying down on a mat, and there's pillows around you. And sometimes people get quite active, especially the first hour of the music is very kind of intense music that has some tribal drumming or trance music, where it really is something that encourages this inner intelligence to release physically if there's something that needs to be released. And so sometimes people are very vocal, sometimes they tone the music, sometimes they're screaming or yelling or crying, and and it isn't like the basic kind of suggestion or instruction is, just because, like, let's say, like a dance style music comes on, or tribal drumming or something, it's not like, oh, your mind is going, oh, this is dance music, I should be moving around. It's like, you just let it go. If your body wants to move, you let your body do what it wants to do. So it's really just a let go, basically, completely. And then the second piece of the music is more like designed to facilitate, if you need it, emotional release. So, and then the third is kind of integration music, and that's like sacred chant, that type of thing. So there's kind of a trajectory to the music, but the music really just facilitates and allows you to go deeper into the process. It's really the breath that carries you through the process. And so basically there's 1 3-hour breathing sequence, and during the workshops you actually work with a partner that usually most people just pick up the day of the workshop, where they're like watching over you while you're breathing. And the person who's watching over you is called the sitter. And so that's actually another important piece of the experience during the day. Is you're a breather during 1 3-hour breathing sequence, and then you're a sitter during a second 3-hour breathing sequence. And the sitter is basically, it's like holding space in essence, and also just being there to take care of your needs so you can totally drop in. If you need water, there's a little signal, they hand you water. You need to go to the bathroom, they lead you there, they lead you back. You need a tissue, they hand you tissue. So it's really about just being there and being present for the other person. And it's a very beautiful experience, actually. Many people say that the sitting experience is at least as powerful as the breathing experience for them. You know, and basically there's 2 sequences, and there's a morning, afternoon. So for one, you're being a breather, and for the other, you're being a sitter. And one example of, there was this one woman who came and did breath work, and she wasn't there for another year, and she came back a year later. And what she said was that during that time they had found that her mother had terminal cancer. And so she was with her mother during this process while she was dying during the year. She said the experience during the breath work, when she had been a sitter, allowed her to be with her mother in a completely different way than she would have been otherwise. Where she could just put aside her own stuff and just kind of be there for her mother going through the process. So both of these experiences are important pieces of the day. It isn't just like, oh, I'm sitting and waiting for my breathing experience to come. So you're a breather for 3 hours, you're a sitter for 3 hours, and then there's some meal breaks. And then after you do the breathing, you also do what they call, when you're finished complete, as part of the integration process, you do mandala drawing, which is where through like just art, you kind of express your experience to allow, while you're still kind of half in, half out of this non-ordinary state of consciousness, to fully, like, just to express whatever it wants to express. And it's not about creating like something like this. Sometimes people just make hearts or just put color splotches or whatever, but it's just allowing, while you're still kind of out of your kind of mind chatter brain, allowing the experience to express itself through art, basically, through creativity. And then the last part of it is like sharing in the evening, where people can share whatever they want from the experience. So and that's a 12-hour day. And people just have really just amazing experiences. And what can I say about that? I think that's important, like when people sometimes ask me, well, I prefer to do like psychedelic experiences, and breathwork or this or that. And there isn't like a one or the other. I mean, everything stands on its own merit. Different people have different paths that work for them. Some people love breathwork, some people, it's okay for them and they'd rather do something else. I'd say, I don't know, 80% of the people that have breathwork get an amazing experience and come back and do it multiple times. And in terms of how often it's recommended to do breathwork, I would say it's like with anything else. It's like when you're called to do it next to do it next. Like there is no, you've got to do it. Every experience stands on itself. It's not like you do it every week or every month or whatever. Some people come once and a year later they come back and do it again. Some people want to come back 3 weeks later or a month later and say, okay, I've integrated that, I want to go deeper, I want to go further. And each experience is completely different. Like, you can have one experience one day, and if you breathe 2 days later, it would be completely different based on what was up for you in that moment. You might have a transpersonal experience one time, and then the next time it would just be a visual experience, and then another time it might be just a sensory experience where you just feel stuff running through your body. So it's really, each experience stands on its own. And it's just an amazing modality. It's just mind-blowing that just through breath and music, you can put yourself in the same places and just have these experiences that it would be hard to believe if you didn't actually experience it, that you could actually have just through like your own breath and just through music. It's just incredible, at least to me. It just blew my mind when I got my first experience that was actually possible to have that without any type of substance, without any type, just through, like, it's in essence a natural experience that your body is designed to have. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to have it. So, are there any questions? Yes.
So what it sounds like to me is that breathwork is another modality for an altered state where you can process and move emotions, but it doesn't necessarily have certain features such as seeing patterns or visuals like on LSD or ayahuasca, or other aspects of that.
It really depends on the person. And it's basically your inner intelligence or your healer will bring you the experience in the way that it feels like will be most relevant to you. Some people have visuals every time they do breath work, where they actually have visuals of being back when they were children, or having visuals of being in someone else's body or in an animal's body or this or that, where they're actually seeing that and feeling like they're in the animal's body. Some people never get visuals. So it's really more like, some people are just more visually oriented than others. So people that are really intensely visually oriented will probably get visuals, because that's how their inner intelligence will bring it to you, bring you your experience. So it's really like it's not like you can compare where, like, I can't say every time people get visuals, because that's not true. I'd say for me, maybe 25% of the time I end up in kind of this more visual, or 30% visual journey. Other times it's more of a body kind of thing where I feel like a release in my body or something else. So it really depends on the experience.
Okay. Yeah. Have you tried anybody floating in like a float tank, you could say? Is that a different experience, like a sensory deprivation tank where you float in Epsom salt?
I actually have a float tank in my deck. So.
Oh, I'm actually working with the owner of a float clinic as well to try and get that going a little bit better.
Yeah, no, I love float tanks, and
yeah.
I guess my experience through a float tank is that sometimes I'm in there and it's like and I just can't drop into the experience. It's like my mind is just like still there, and after a while I just kind of give up. And sometimes I can really drop in. And I have these amazing experiences. If and like I lose track of time, and like I'm very into my body, because I can feel my blood going around. It's an amazing experience. You can like feel your breath in your body, and so it's like sometimes I can drop into I have only once or twice actually gotten visuals in a float experience.
Well, what if you incorporated your techniques?
Yeah, I've never actually done like deep breathing.
Oh, okay. That might be really cool.
And part of it is that like you can't play music, which is kind of an integral part of the experience. So it's not in my float tank. And some of them you can actually play music now.
Oh, okay.
And some of the ones that are being built
right
now.
Yeah, the one I go to is in Florence. They play music.
Yeah. So you could actually do a whole breathwork experience in a float tank if you put like a 3-hour breathwork music experience. So. Yeah. But I've never done that, so I can't really comment on the combination.
Okay, for sure.
Yes.
How did they come up with a 3-hour window? And is it like always the 3-hour window, or are there different like modalities or frameworks, or you can go deeper, more advanced, or is it just kind of like they got the one way of doing it?
Well, basically, when he was developing this, he experimented with different lengths of experiences. Mm-hmm. And he just found that somewhere between 2.5 and 3 hours was the optimal time frame for people. At the end of that, people were just kind of ready to complete, in essence. That's just what he found from experimentation. And that's part of what I like about this. This whole modality, it wasn't developed through like some theoretical stuff. He really worked with people to see what worked and to see when people had deeper experiences and not. He did it like from a kind of a scientific basis, and that's how we developed the modality. In terms of what types of music, in terms of like what types of breathing, in terms of like the length of the experience and that type of thing. So, and at first he did it without the sitting experience, and then he tried it with the sitting experience. And that was kind of random, because he was at the beginning he was the one who was kind of working with people, and if they got into trouble during the experience and helping them, and then he hurt his back, so he couldn't do it. So he said, all right, we're going to try it a different way. We're going to try it where we're going to pair off. And he just found that actually worked better. So then he incorporated it. So it's really all kind of a trial and error thing of developing this, which is the same as the length of music.
And are you going to get into the technical aspects of how it's done and like what the breaths are like, or?
I'm sorry, what the?
Are you going to explain a little more technically, like, because there's all kinds of, there's Ujjayi breath and breath of fire.
Yeah. Actually, what we're going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and then we're actually going to have a breathing experience.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you exactly how that works.
Quick intermission, and then we're going to do a breathing experience if you'd like to stay for that.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so that's actually the best part. So if I was going to advise you to get a choice, I would say, come for the breathing experience, don't come for the talk. But yes.
I'm wondering if there's any information or if there's been any studies done on any of the chemicals that may be firing off in the brain during this kind of experience.
Well, I think studies that they have done is more about kind of what's going on. Like in the breathing experience, for instance, they found that there are certain changes that physiologically that do happen in your body. Like for instance, the alkalinity of your blood changes. It gets more alkaline. So that affects how much oxygen is being kind of transported to different areas of your body and that type of thing. I don't think they've done, unfortunately, because of the fact that there hasn't been a lot of research done. Because there isn't just money for it. That's the problem. So it's like it isn't like, now there's more money for research with LSD psychotherapy and MDMA, but breathwork is kind of like a side thing, and there just isn't a lot, there isn't like a big organization that's pushing to do more research and to do studies and that type of thing. So there isn't a lot of studies like looking at the brain during a breathwork sequence and what's happening and that type of thing. Yes? Would you have a question?
Oh, no, I just said not yet, because there was no foundations for helping this research, but I saying not yet.
Not yet, right.
Yeah.
Well, they just actually developed, Stan just had a foundation that is just newly developed that's trying to raise money for this kind of stuff. So hopefully in the future they'll be able to do some of that. But right now, the only studies they have done is with testing like the alkalinity in the blood and stuff. So there are changes that the breath does create in your system. They just don't have a real clear idea of exactly how it actually creates the experience.
Yeah, I'd be happy to advertise or to post stuff on my, I have a foundation I'm starting on a page that I have followers on YouTube.
Oh, cool, yeah.
Sharing your information, maybe switch information.
Yeah, that would be great.
Awesome.
Yeah. And for those of you that want to just know more about any of this, Stan's written a ton of books. He's written like 15, 16 books. One on LSD psychotherapy, one on holotropic breathwork, one on the future of psychology, how we see psychology opening up in the future to incorporate this perinatal stuff and kind of this different way of looking at health and healing and that type of thing. So he's done a ton of that stuff. So yeah, yes.
I forget the name, but I recently heard a podcast with someone that has this organization that does all this research. I think it was more with LSD. They recently got all this funding.
That was probably MAPS.
Yeah.
Yeah, MAPS is an organization that basically funds studies with big substances, basically, whether it's, I think they're doing some stuff with LSD and some stuff with MDMA now and with a couple other things, where they actually do scientific controlled studies. So they're trying to, in essence, get these substances so they're actually allowed to be used, and prescribed, in essence, in certain situations, for certain types of conditions. And they're doing these controlled scientific studies now, so they can actually get them approved for certain types of conditions.
And does that facility not research the breathwork?
No, they don't do it.
MAPS stands for the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, and we're actually going to be raising money for them at the Bicycle Day event.
Oh.
So, and with the follow-up email that you guys should all get, after that'll have video talk and a little bit more follow-up information. I can send out what MAPS is all about and everything, so you guys can find out more about that.
Okay, so
maybe
yes.
one more question?
Yeah, did Stan ever combine himself with Kundalini yoga? A lot of what you said about separating the mind from the self and all that, it all could have applied very easily to Kundalini yoga and what that practice is, which is a different thing, but it seems like there's a lot of overlap.
Well, he has never combined it, but he did say that, you know, in the yoga practice, Kundalini yoga is kind of like the closest cousin to breathwork.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of working with energies and stuff like that. So there definitely is some kind of correlation, but he's never done like where he's combined the two. But in many of the workshops, like where they have weekend retreats and stuff, they'll have a Kundalini yoga teacher come and do a session like before the breathwork session to get people so they have deeper experiences and can drop in quicker and that kind of thing. Because there is kind of a nice synergy.
It seems like they would complement very well.
Yeah. Good.
Can you have a bad trip? You know, like an altered state?
I'm sorry, what?
Can you actually have a bad trip if you reach like an altered state like that?
Well, when you say a bad trip, really it's what people would call bad trips is where you are, in essence, let's say, re-experiencing something negative that had happened to you in your past. Like it doesn't put anything into you that's not already there. It's just that this is stuff that's buried in your psyche that now is ready to be processed and released. So basically, the like when stuff is coming up, that's like negative stuff. It's already in there, already kind of rolling around, and this is like, okay, let's get it out and get it released out of your system. So basically, at the end of the day, there's always at the end of your session, like in a breathwork workshop, the part of the job of the facilitator is always to make sure that you're in a clear space when you're complete. And there's various ways to work with people in order to, if they still feel like they're a little incomplete, there's ways to work with them, like they would have them keep reading for a while, or there's various processes in order to basically complete the release at that point if they feel like things are half in, half out. One of the things that can be used is something called body work. And body work is not massage, it's like release work, where it works with the basic physiological principle that if something is going to release, many times, first it gets as tense as possible. Like, for instance, if you want your body to relax, the best way to do it is tense every muscle in your body and then let it go, and it'll completely go in the other direction. So a lot of times if stuff gets like, you feel like it's stuck, there's like not only an emotional component, but a physical component. So there'll be what they call body work, where you basically make that piece of the body, or let's say it's your shoulder or something, put pressure against it, and push against it, make it as tense as possible, and then it fully releases out of your system. So there's various techniques that we're taught in order to make sure that when people leave, they actually have a complete release of whatever came up, or at least as much as is possible in that day. So you know, have them leave in a good place, basically. And if people really, in the middle of the process, feel like it's just too much, they just slow down their breathing. If they really don't want to go any further, you know, they can always do that if they want to. And then that's always an option. So.
Great. Thank you, Michael. So we're going to take a 5-minute break, but let's give Michael a